Oh, hi. You caught me live streaming. Welcome to the show. My name is Chris, and I'm the host of this show, which I call the Weekly Spinner Rack. All that really means is that we're going to talk about things like the latest comic books that came out, as well as the latest comic book news, because this is a weekly show. Always tons of stuff to riff on and get the chat's opinion as well. So let's say there's a few people already here in the chat. Let's greet some of them. Thank you. Yes, my other show, Comic Tropes, I just reviewed a pretty weird comic called Nightcat. Thank you for the kind words, though. And hello to Chemdog. Let's say hello, Octung Baby, Joe Dent. Nice to have you here. Erwin Papa. Let's see, just clicking off some of the names, but it's going really fast now. I'm not going to be able to get everybody. But yes, Keith mentions that my internet is working. It was out for over 24 hours. And initially, the estimate from Xfinity was that we would not get it back until Wednesday. Today is Monday. And fortunately, it did come back today. So that was a relief for me anyway. Really nice to see. Let's see. Looking forward to the new Transformers comic book. Yeah, we're going to, in addition to talking about the latest comics that came out this week, I've got a bunch of comic book news, and I'll give some of my non-spoiler reactions to things like the Flash movie, the Stan Lee documentary. A bunch of comic book related stuff happened this week. It was actually a pretty big week for news. I've got it sort of all embedded within the news of the week document that I'll pull up. Yeah, I don't love Xfinity, but they're the ones that can offer, theoretically anyway, the fastest speeds for internet around here. So we got a lot of great stuff I cannot wait to talk about with all of you. Just saying hello to a few more people. Lovely to have you all here, all over the place. That's really nice. That's really cool. Hello to everybody. Hey, tell you what, why don't I caffeinate a little bit? Oh, wow. So I've been having coffee during the show lately, and I just this afternoon found a sugar-free raspberry syrup that I put a little in here. Wow, does that taste fantastic, actually. Mm. Oh my God, that's great. Oh my God, you're going to get the best out of me. Before I was honestly, look, I'll be honest, I was totally going to half-ass it, but hey, give me a nice cup of delicious coffee. Mm. All right, what can I say? You, you got me. You got 100% of me. Let's see. I am caffeinating. And let's see. Hold on just a second while the internet catches up. There we go. Yeah. Looking at some new computers. I think that Chrissy and I have narrowed down which one I want to get. Oh, EJ, yeah, you're in Taiwan. Well, and I think that you said that you saw the Flash movie over there, didn't you? Well, I hope you're having a good time seeing some family. Can't wait for you to get back. But thank you so much for watching. I imagine it's really what is it, really late there or really early? It's hard for me. I'm trying to think ahead how many time zones away you are. But anyway, um, cranberry syrup. I said raspberry, just to be clear. Cranberry does sound interesting, actually. Cranberry could work. Torani, Torani. They make tons of coffee syrups, and they actually make a decent range of sugar-free ones. I try to avoid all processed sugar, as many carbs as I can. So yeah, let's see. Hello from Monterrey, Mexico. Very cool. Um, yeah, I'm having a good time, Atari, especially now that I get to talk to all of you. This is going to be a lot of fun. Let me pull up my document. Wow, I've got a few people punching in from Mexico. Thank you very much. My Spanish has gotten really bad. I had to learn it in college. Could lightly speak conversationally, but now I speak like a baby. I remember words, but none of the how you like get like the tense right or where you put a preposition. I just can't do it. Thank you very much, Steve. Always appreciate that. And hello, Daniel. Oh, look, got so many regulars here. Jim, Jim, you've been posting some really exciting artwork lately, and I'm not just saying that. I really enjoyed seeing things like that Ghost Rider and the Spider Punk that you've been sharing on places like your Twitter and your Instagram. Folks, if you're not following Jim, he's sharing lots and lots of fun art. Yeah, Nightcat was an interesting project to interesting project. Every once in a while, I have to do an episode that I'll flatter myself and call a funny one, where I look at a comic that I think is not too great. Two reasons for that. One, sometimes I want to show something that's not great so that we can sort of, I mostly talk up things that I love, and I want to have a little bit of a contrast there. But also, um, they're a little easier for me to make. And I figure it's not for everybody when I do the funny episodes, but it's fun for me, and I figure better some content than no content, because otherwise basically I'd be taking that whole week off to produce something else. So that's what I'm doing there. Oh, thank you. Yeah, thank you, Steve. Yes, if I'm given time, I can like read and translate written Spanish. I might need help with like a word or two, but I can do that, but I'm slow also. That episode about like the Mexican Spider-Man comics, uh El let's see, El Sopradante Hombre Araña. They were really interesting. That was fun. Hey, awesome. Nice to see you, Jean. That's my sister. So always excited to see you. Um, Anyway, so I've got my little thumbnail here, and I threw myself into the Flash costume. I think I lined that up pretty well. We're going to talk a little bit about the Flash. No spoilers from me, but I am going to talk about it because it was a comic book thing that came out. Um, let's see. Yeah, let's just get into it. And before I go too far, my buddy Randy likes making comics. He does them through Kickstarter, pretty modest budgets, but the nice thing about it, he always pays his talent right away, and he always produces the comics and gets them to you very quickly. He's got an impeccable track record. Issue 4 of his sort of all ages superhero comic Bullet Adventures is out. It's a speedster story. Good timing with the Flash being out. And with issue 4, you can get the previous 3 issues as well if you haven't read it. So I just wanted to point that out. Bullet Adventures. I'm always going to help mention friends projects. First piece of news I'd love to start with. Not sure how many of you were interested or had the time, but there was a Stan Lee documentary that came out on Disney Plus a couple days ago about Stan Lee. Right, I think I said that, so I might have repeated myself there. Professional. Oh, gotta acknowledge this. Thank you so much. That's sincerely appreciated. Just really really cool. I thank you. That means a lot to me. I hope you know that. I really do. Um, every little bit helps. $1 on Patreon makes a huge difference to sort of making this worthwhile. Thank you. But that's nice. That's really nice. I watched it. I'm curious. I find Stan Lee interesting. I I go in ebbs and flows as to how much I like him versus how much I really dislike him. And I have to admit, right now, I'm kind of on the low end of liking Stan Lee. Um, I will say that this documentary is very interesting. It what does is it takes interviews that Stan Lee has provided, speeches, and all that kind of stuff throughout his life. He's done very many, obviously, and I will give him credit. I think that was good for comics. Can we get a Stan Lee impression? Asks Andrew Jefferson. You should check out my documentary, True Believers. It's got every single bit of news that you'd ever want to see about me. I would say Stan Lee is better than Bob Kane because Stan Lee did do a few things. He did sort of push for the idea of putting credits in comic books. That really wasn't done before Marvel started doing it in the 60s, not on any kind of a regular basis. So he did give people more credit than they had been given in the past. Did he hog a lot of credit as a co-creator? I think he did. Probably too much, but he did push comics very hard. He was comics cheerleader and got a lot of people to notice it. Also, he did take chances here and there. here and there. For instance, the U.S. government approached him and said, "Hey, a lot of people read Spider-Man. We would appreciate it if you did something about the dangers of drug use." And he did a 3-issue arc in Spider-Man, and it wouldn't be approved by the Comics Code. They said, "No, you can't mention drugs, period." To his credit, he did publish an anti-drug story without the Comics Code. That was groundbreaking. That was a decision he made. So he made some good moves. But I think he deluded himself into thinking exactly how much he did. Let's see. I almost knocked Stanley on his butt in 2012 Philly. Oh, you monster. Yeah, and I think Bob Kane was just kind of awful. He just took all the credit. This documentary, I'll give it credit for this, folks. It's an undertaking to gather. They gathered all those interviews throughout like a very lengthy career, and they put it into a chronological timeline where it makes sense. And he tells his version of the Marvel story, and it does make him look good, of course, but they do actually also include his bizarre talk with Jack Kirby. For Jack Kirby's 70th birthday, he was on a radio show. And Stan Lee called in. They hadn't talked in a few years, and he called in to wish him a happy birthday. And it starts very sweet. They talk about having a good time working together. They both say that. And then somehow it quickly shifts into them arguing about how much credit each deserved. Stan Lee's like, "I wrote every word in every like speech bubble, I want to say." And then Jack's like, "Well, no, I wrote some of those notes in the margins, actually." And Stan Lee's like, "No, no, no." So it was crazy. Lovely to see some of my friends here. We've got Marvin Nation and Peg Warmers. That's nice. Let's see. So anyway, this came out, right? And like I say, it is an impressive piece of storytelling in one sense. It's a little biased, more than a little, but it is interesting as one source. Don't use it as your primary source. It's interesting if you already know Stan Lee's history from other sources. Then it makes it very interesting. But there was a reaction from Jack Kirby's family. Specifically, Jack's son Neil had his daughter Jillian, Jack Kirby's granddaughter, post this to Twitter. He released a huge statement, and a lot of it is arguing that Jack Kirby didn't get enough credit, which is totally fair, and he makes some really good points. I just have a small piece of this statement that I'm going to read to you. I recommend looking up either the news or Jillian's Twitter. This is part of what Neil Kirby had to say. "Are we to assume Lee had a hand in creating every Marvel character? Are we to assume that the other co-creator never walked into Lee's office and said, 'Stan, I have a great idea for a character'? According to Lee, it was always his idea. Lee spends a fair amount of time talking about how and why he created the Fantastic Four with only one fleeting reference to my father. Indeed, most comics historians recognize that my father based the Fantastic Four on a 1957 comic he created for DC, Challengers of the Unknown, even named Ben Grimm the Thing after his father Benjamin, and Sue Storm after my older sister Susan." It's a really good argument. And in fact, a lot of people don't know that Jack Kirby probably also came up with the idea for Spider-Man, just to be clear. Stan always says, "I'll give Ditko credit, like co-creator credit, but I had the idea." If you look at the history, that's probably not true. Jack Kirby had an idea. Unfortunately, the reason this doesn't get remembered, folks, is I'll focus on me for a minute because I want to talk about this. There's no surviving artwork from Jack Kirby to sort of help back this up. Just both Jack Kirby and Steve Ditko talking about it pretty openly and honestly, and doing sort of recreations of the art that was done back then. Before Kirby came to Marvel in the 60s, he had created an idea for a superhero that he was calling the Silver Spider. And it was a teen character The one difference was he could turn into an adult superhero, kind of like Captain Marvel, Shazam. And by all accounts, he showed that to Stan, and Stan sort of took it from there and had Steve Ditko revise it to become the Spider-Man that we know, both visually and the fact that he's always a teenager, skinnier than like how Jack drew things. Um, but Jack Kirby drew that cover to Amazing Fantasy 15. That is Jack Kirby, not Steve Ditko. I think that there is evidence out there to support the fact that Kirby probably created even that character. But anyway, uh, according to Stan, he looked at a fly on the wall and said, "Wouldn't it be neat to see things from the perspective of walking around on the wall? I've got it, Spider-Man, and he'll be a teenage superhero, but not a sidekick. First time." And so basically, that idea that Kirby had morphed into The Fly, one of the superheroes that he made with Joe Simon over at Archie Comics. So, just a little bit of history, and I thought it was worth mentioning that it's an interesting documentary. What I would say is worth watching if you've already read a bunch of history about the time and made up your mind who gets how much credit, because this is all from Stan's perspective. But as a piece of filmmaking, it is entertaining, and I'm sure it was a lot of work to splice together so many different interviews and put it chronologically. Oh, this is interesting. Two Morrows put out a book a couple years ago called Stuff Said that painstakingly documents so much of the behind the scenes creation of Marvel, and the Kirby and Lee collabs. Definitely worth a read. I'm always impressed with the stuff Two Morrows did. I did not know about that one, so that's really interesting. Uh, yeah, look. Stan Lee's dialogue is kind of corny. At the same time, I do kind of like it, and I can tell when it's Stan Lee dialogue. So does he help shape the personalities of some of these characters? Yeah, and I'm sure he had a couple plot ideas too. I would say the majority of the story ideas came from Jack Kirby, because if you separate them, look at what Stan Lee created without Jack and look at what Jack created without Stan. Jack creates a lot more recognizable stuff. It's like, the best example for him is when he went to DC in the 70s and created the Demon and Dark Side and the Forever People and Genesis and, all the New God stuff. Like that's very Kirby-esque. Whereas like Stan Lee with John Romita was like, all right, he came up with like the Kingpin and the Rhino, but not a whole lot else. Just my opinion. Fourth World. The Fourth World. Thanks. We'll move on. Here's another thing. There was a Flash movie, and I'm going to give my non-spoiler thoughts on it in just a second, but I did think that this was interesting. A lot of people have been saying DC has been better than Marvel at credits. And according to, say, Jim Starlin, he got paid more for like KG Beast than he did for, characters like Thanos. And the Flash's movie credits start on a really good note. They've got huge credits for the Flash's creators, Harry Lampert and Gardner Fox, as well as the Barry Allen version by Robert Kanigher and Carmine Infantino. Cool. And then they've got this page here where they're talking about some of the other, characters like Wonder Woman, and down here they're talking about Superman and stuff like that. And they've got all these different creators in here that contributed important aspects to the stories. I see Jeff Johns or Andy Kubert in there. They did Flashpoint. Marv Wolfman, Kurt Swan, George Perez, Frank Miller. A lot of interesting people. Dave Johnson might be like a little confusing until you learn that they cut out some stuff with Supergirl that I guess was based on Superman Red Sun that he did with Mark Miller. So that's probably in here somewhere too. Yeah, they're Mark Miller. They don't credit Mark Waid. That's bonkers. Mark Waid wrote so many Flash stories, and he created the idea of the Speed Force, which is such an important part of like all of Flash at this point. of course, the movie, but also the comics. The Speed Force is a huge concept. For some reason, Mark Waid got overlooked. Also, they don't credit Grant Morrison, who created Black Flash, and there's sort of like some ideas that I think are based on that. So those are two big oversights that I was stunned by. Look, I mean, I'm glad to see people like Ramona Fradon, Carrie Bates, Harry Peter. Like, there's some really deep cuts in terms of who they're crediting here. But think about it. It's like, how many credits do they have for the special effects artists in movies, which they deserve, you know? But there's so many names there. And they can't take a few minutes to like be sure that they got all the proper credits for the comics. Personally, I think that they should just be like crediting pretty much anybody that worked on any Flash comic, but still. Yeah, yeah, great. Yeah, Mike Waringo. I don't know. It was just crazy. Yeah, it was, Mark Waid does rule. Good to see Irv Nova N yeah, Irv Novick, I think is what you meant. Yeah. So they credited a lot, but that was just stunning. Jeff Johns got in there, but not Mark Waid for some reason. Anyway, I was really surprised when I saw that because I'll be honest, that was one like it goes by pretty fast. But I was staying for the post credit scene and I was looking at that and I was like, I'm pretty sure I did not see Mark Wade's name there. And I looked, and sure enough, like shortly after I got home, I was finding news about it. Seems like a huge mistake. Maybe they'll correct that on, say, like the home release for streaming and DVD, etc., Blu-ray. But wow, stunning. As far as the movie it goes, where would I rank it? Maybe something like a 6 out of 10, which I think is fair. I would say that it was okay. It was kind of good. It wasn't a disaster. I won't call it a disaster or anything, but I don't think it was great. Some of the early reviews were like proclaiming that it was great. I don't think it looks like they spent the $200 million it cost to make it on screen. They make some very strange decisions with the special effects. It's stylized, and I get that. And I legit think that the CW, with its kind of rinky-dink TV budget, made Flash look cooler when he ran. Flash actually looks fast and determined, as compared to in this movie. Like, he runs in slow motion, like really like sort of off balance and wavy. Eh, He enters like the chronosphere when he's in the Speed Force, and he can sort of see other people, including some dead people that I'm pretty sure would not want to be digitally recreated. George Reeve. It just, I didn't like how that looked, but I could get past it if the story was good, okay? And there was some good action beats, and there were some good performances. I sincerely think both Ben Affleck and Michael Keaton were pretty fantastic as Batman. Pretty fantastic. I think that this somewhat newcomer actress, Sasha Calle, was fascinating as Supergirl. I really liked that. I didn't even mind Ezra Miller too much as Barry Allen, because they actually, just to be clear, I don't think it's much of a spoiler if you've seen the trailer. There are two Barry Allens from different points in his timeline on it, and one is much more annoying, but that actually makes the current modern version a lot more grounded and serious and kind of likable. But the big finale to everything, there's character growth, and I like that. But the character growth is essentially being willing to walk away from a situation that you can't fix, which isn't very dramatic, all things considered. Barry Allen doesn't, like, go to town beating up a supervillain, and he doesn't really go up against his own supervillain. I didn't love it. I didn't love it. I also don't feel like it does anything, just to be clear, to set up a new DCU universe. They could have used it that way. They probably had finished it before then. It does not reset for a new universe, just to be clear. But that's my thoughts, and I'm not going to get too much into the twists and turns and stuff. A contra? No, no. I was talking about. I did not give the wrong actor's name for the controversial cameo. I am specifically saying there is a brief cameo in CG of George Reeve, who played Superman on the Adventures of Superman black and white TV show. There is a lot of evidence to show that A, he was miserable being typecast as Superman, despite the great work he did and the great work he did even off screen with like kids and stuff. And there's a lot of evidence that he unalived himself because he felt so trapped in that role. I do not think that no matter what, whether like somebody else did it to him or he did it to himself, I don't think he really would have felt honored to be shown as Superman again. I think he did not want to be associated with that role anymore. So I did mean it that. But I'm not going to talk about the other cameos. That one was like blink and you miss it type thing. So I think it's fair. Well, yeah, Randy, I'm trying to use like language that YouTube isn't going to necessarily flag. I could have said like, the hard S word, but YouTube sometimes doesn't like that. They literally have like an algorithm that listens for certain words and they'll like show a video less if you say certain words. So, oh yeah, Ken Dog, I think that the show was a blast. I think that he put in a good performance, but the behind the scenes story is very sad. Actually, Ben Affleck starred in a version of George Reeves' life, Hollywoodland, that I actually recommend. I think it's really interesting, and it's a sad story. It's a sad story. Okay. Um, Ezra Miller is so annoying that the first half of the movie is kind of hard to watch, but I'd pay full price for the Batman and Supergirl scenes. That's the best stuff, but I wasn't satisfied with how it resolved. I wasn't satisfied at all with how it resolved. I'm not going to speak to who has a cameo and who doesn't. Suffice to say, I liked one or two of them. Okay. They don't have tons of that stuff, just to be clear. There's not, you'd think that there would be actually more fan service multiverse stuff. There's not a lot of it. Don't go in expecting as much as maybe they've hinted at it. I'm going to move on though. Those were the two big sort of comic book movies, a documentary and a film release that came out. But tied to that, DC is hiring The Flash's director, Andy Muschietti, to direct their next Batman movie, which they've titled The Brave and the Bold, and will feature Batman and Robin. James Gunn and Peter Safran, you guys probably know, head up the new DCU that's moving forward. And they co-issued a statement to Variety, trade publication, talking about why they hired him. They said, "We saw The Flash. Even before taking the reins at DC Studios, we knew we were in the hands of not only a visionary director, but a massive DC fan. It's a magnificent film, questionable. Funny, emotional, thrilling. Sometimes it's all of those things. And Andy's affinity and passion for these characters and this world just resonates through every frame. So when it came time to find a director for The Brave and the Bold, there was really only one choice." Fair enough. He's done some other movies that I liked more. He did both of the It movies, and that first It movie I thought was really, really strong. And he did a movie, like a horror movie. I think it was called Mama. Anyway, it was good. So he's made some good stuff. Oh man, I would like Jensen Ackles as Batman. I would sincerely like that. I don't know if he's considered enough of a name for something like this, but I do think that he'd probably do a good job. I don't mind that. Whatever. We'll see how he can do. I feel like he'll probably be able to do a better job on this than he did on Flash. The Flash just had so many rewrites and changing of the guard. It got delayed. It was originally supposed to come out back in 2018. It got delayed by 5 years. It's crazy. Crazy. So, some sad news, but just something that happens. John Romita Sr. passed away this past week, but there's some positive stuff in a way. I mean, he was 93, and that is an age I would love to be able to reach that far. That's pretty awesome. He began working in comics. Just a little history about him. Began working in comics back in 1949. Briefly delayed in when he was drafted into the Army for World War II. Or wait, now that I think of it, I might have that wrong about World War II. He might have been drafted into the army for the Korean War in the 50s, actually. But he was drafted into the army was my only point. I'm sorry, I didn't prepare a whole biography. I was kind of going off my memories. Um, Co-created tons of Marvel characters. Really came up, I think, with the look for a lot of Marvel throughout the 70s. He was unofficially the art director at Marvel. Stan, by the way, paid himself to be the art director, but the responsibilities fell to John Romita Sr. You can find that in an interview with the late John Romita Sr. and the late Tom Spurgeon. Great interview. And he, like, Romita was super, super friendly and happy, but he was like, I was never paid to be art director. But he co-created characters like Mary Jane Watson, who he based on Anne Margaret, Luke Cage, Punisher, Wolverine. I mean, boy, if he didn't like create some of those characters, like what would the '90s have looked like for Marvel? I wonder. Famously succeeded Steve Ditko on Spider-Man, and definitely brought his own unique look to Spider-Man, which I think a lot of people like more than Steve Ditko. Um, it does look great. He definitely makes Spider-Man a little more bulked up. Um, all the features are a little more rounded. People are a little less awkward. Peter Parker's a little handsomer. He began working regularly for Marvel, like again. He'd done some stuff in '49 for Atlas, but he began working regularly for them in '65. But this past week, he did pass away in his sleep. And that's a loss. John Romita Sr. was certainly a fantastic artist. I've always liked his work. Who doesn't like John Romita Sr.'s artwork? He's a good storyteller. He draws really interesting people, good hands, good faces, lots of good stuff, good design work. Um, there's a lot to like about him. A lot to like about him. I think he sort of defined the house style once Jack Kirby moved on because just, Stan wanted one main guy early on. But anyway, great artist. Nobody seems to have a single bad thing to say about John Romita Sr. Only really, really nice things. Oh, that's really interesting, Marvin. My top three Spider-Man artists. Well, I would have to put Ditko in there because he was the first ongoing artist, and I do think he's an interesting artist. I think he defined the look. Um, who else do I love for Spider-Man? I think it is worth giving Todd McFarlane a lot of credit for making him more, what would I call it? Not acrobatic, but more sort of limber and twisty, and sort of pushed that element. I think that he did a lot of great things. And then uh, just a great artist that I love in general. I think that Stuart Immonen did a great job on like a lot of Ultimate Spider-Man stuff. So I'll go with that. I'll go with that. But that's not an easy thing. And tomorrow I might have three different artists. But thank you. I like Ross Andrew a lot too, and that was definitely a name sort of bouncing around in my head just now. A lot, really good artist for him. Yeah, I think he was primarily a ghost artist on a bunch of those early Captain America things, but yeah, he did work on that. Contortionist. Thank you, Victor. I think that is a word that I was looking for. Thank you. You guys know what I'm thinking up here. Let's see. Romita Sr., Marcos Martin, Mike Waringo. Okay. Yeah. I'm seeing a lot of people list Eric Larson, Mark Bagley. Um, I love Mike Zeck for everything. He did do my favorite story, Craven's Last Hunt, but he didn't do a lot. I was kind of looking for guys that didn't just draw a good Spider-Man, but did a bit of a good run that sort of influenced things. Yeah. I'm too high on caffeine, folks. We gotta talk about so much stuff. I mean, when I was younger, I think like because of where I sort of started for a while, it was definitely McFarlane, Larson, and Bagley. I absolutely adored. Yeah, I guess we can mention there was a Craven trailer. It's kind of a weird one. It almost looks like it implies that some lion's blood falls into a wound, and that's what gives him his powers. But I'm pretty sure since Calypso is in the movie, Craven must get powers from magic because Calypso does sort of voodoo magic, and I would imagine that's how he gets powers. Since he doesn't, in the comics, he just sort of takes a potion, and that gives him heightened senses and stuff. What else? Some of the action looked interesting. Visually, by the end, he looks like Craven. There's a couple things I guess you could recommend, but I don't know what to make of it. Kind of a weird idea. Also weird that he's like friend to animals everywhere. I wouldn't have expected that. Would not have guessed. I usually talk about comic bookstore robberies when they come up because it's interesting. But this is a rare case where somebody actually got their sentence reduced. Oh, let me acknowledge this real quick. Thank you, Marvin. That's amazing. Any artist that has not done Spider-Man that you would like to see on the book? Oh, absolutely, absolutely. Give me a sec. I would, yeah, yeah, but it's like kind of current artists because it seems like everybody touches Spider-Man eventually. You guys know I love Daniel Warren Johnson. I think he would do a very kinetic, exciting Spider-Man. Steve Skroce did a pretty kinetic and exciting Spider-Man, by the way. Um, but Daniel Warren Johnson, I would love to see. After seeing Jim Mahfood draw Spider-Punk this past week, I would be pretty excited to see him take on a character like that specifically. I think that that would be cool. And a couple people are saying the last one that I was just about to do, Dan Mora. Yeah. Uh, nice. Chico Rijo. Yes. Chris Somney would be cool. Very cool. John says, I'm biased as a young teen then, but McFarlane was a revelation. I was transfixed on his cityscapes and web complexity. So 90s. If you go back, a lot of those cityscapes are photostats, just to be clear. But yeah, he did do a lot of detail on stuff like the webs. All right. All right. Jim says that he's ready. Yeah. Just to be clear, Jim, I don't think like Tom Brevoort or anything is watching this show, but yeah, I think that you would. I think you would sincerely kill it. I liked your take on Spider Punk. That just really fit the tone of the character. That really, really would work for me. Oh, what an interesting idea. Trad Moore is so unique too that I would take him on anything. He was great on Doctor Strange and Silver Surfer. Those characters really fit, but I'd love to see him do something like Spider-Man. That's interesting. That's interesting. Hmm. Okay, so a young guy robbed a comic book store owner to set the scene. Okay, back in 2020, because this guy's been in jail. Okay, he was caught. And I'm gonna butcher the name, but Rafahi Al Rafahi. He mugged the owner of Alpha Comics in Calgary. At the time, the owner was carrying a briefcase with some graded comic books. They were slabbed. They were worth about $43,000 Canadian, probably, but still worth quite a bit. He was caught, and he was initially sentenced to, oh, I say 12 years, I mean 12 months, 12 months of prison, plus an additional 12 months of house arrest. But he got out kind of recently, and the court eliminated the house arrest portion because this comic robbery, there were a couple extenuating factors here. First, this is like the only time he committed a crime. And second, the poor guy was suffering from schizophrenia at the time. So who's to say if he would make similar decisions, if he was on medication? That's pretty tough. So right now, they got rid of that, and he's under 18 months of probation. But these are some of the comics that he had stolen. Early Fantastic Fours here. It's worth a lot of money. You commit a crime, and I guess it doesn't matter if you're schizophrenic. I guess you still serve time up. But the 12 additional months of house arrest just seem. I agree that seems pretty extreme after you've served a whole year in jail for that. Like, the guy got his stuff back. So, I'm having trouble with my mouse. This is taking me a minute. Oh, wow, some interesting choices. Lee Weeks is fantastic, fantastic. Yes, I have Bernie Wrightson's Hooky Spider-Man graphic novel. Very unique look at the character. Very, very good. Also, who did yes, Charles Vess. Charles Vess did some really gorgeous covers, by the way, when Web of Spider-Man started out. Alpha Comics is good. Same with Phoenix Comics. Okay, nice. Glad to hear it. Glad to hear it. Mugging makes it seem like it wasn't premeditated. I don't think so. I don't think so. Yeah, it was initially going to be like 12 months in jail, 18 months of probation, and also like 12 months of house arrest. That's a lot. Jim Rugg? Sure. Jim's a talented artist. I'd be curious to see him on something like that. I wonder if Stan Sakai has ever touched Spider-Man, Andrew. You say that, and I'm like, I can't think of it happening, but Stan's done all sorts of little things. He's been in the industry for so long. I wonder if he has touched it. All right. Have fun at work. We got lots more news to go over and comics to review. Marvel today just casually spoiled the fact that they're bringing Kamala Khan right back. Keep in mind, it was just what 2 weeks ago, week and a half, really, that they killed her off in the pages of Amazing Spider-Man, and then they announced that pretty soon there's going to be a funeral for a friend issue. But in the Invincible Iron Man, Tony is marrying Emma Frost, apparently. Surprise. And the cover that Marvel themselves tweeted today. Check out who's on Stature's shoulder here. Here, I've got it zoomed in. This is coming out in September. Apparently, Kamala will attend. She'll be well enough to attend the wedding by September. Now, look, I don't think any of us thought that she would be dead forever, and we knew she's got she's in a movie in November, but still, like less than 2 weeks after they kill her off, they're like teasing an appearance of her like being back to normal. It really just kills any dramatic tension that deaths have. Yeah, it kind of is coming out of nowhere, but I think it's probably like a marriage of convenience is my best guess, like because they're both like rich, they're probably doing something or other with it. I don't know. I mean, theoretically, that could be possible, ChemDog, but at the same time, with Photoshop, they can touch that stuff up. Uh, yeah, I did guess that she would come back in a couple months. Let's see. Thank you for the super chat. Just want to say that since September, my family listens to you while I cook Monday dinner. So I want to give back. Here's a little something for the computer. Well, thank you. And that's amazing to hear that you're cooking some lovely dinners for the family. That's really cool. Yeah, hot rich people marrying it shouldn't really be a surprise, actually. They're both sort of celebrities. That actually, I'll be honest, that sort of makes sense. Not like as like a marriage of love, but like as a sort of like a fling and that they're just gonna, spontaneously get married. I can believe that. But the idea of just sort of spoiling that Kamala's gonna come back before you even publish the issue where everybody's at her funeral is a pretty damn quick turnaround. What's the point, right? Like, what? Why do it if you're going to treat it that lightly? That lightly. Just bonkers. Speaking of Marvel stuff, they announced this week a bunch of delays to their movies. And actually, just to be clear, I don't have it in this news, but I just thought of it. Also, they're moving one movie up that isn't an MC. Well, yeah, it is an MCU movie now. Deadpool 3 was going to come out in November next year, and now it'll come out in May of 2024. So that one actually got bumped sooner, but everything else they sort of bumped. They kept that sort of weekend date that they'd already blocked out, but they're bumping them all back. So, for instance, Captain America, Brand New World is going from May 3rd to July 26th. Thunderbolts goes from the 26th to December 20th. Blade is bumping from September 6th to February 12th. Fantastic Four is going from the 12th to May 2nd. Obviously, we're already into 2025 here. And then the Avengers movies each got pushed back a full year from 2025 to 2026 and 2027. So, but you know what? I am fine with that. I think that there was that brief time where they were just pumping out way too many shows and movies, and now they've slowed that down. Probably, the Hollywood Reporter said that a lot of this is because of the writers' strike, but still, like, take some more time, folks. Take some more time. I agree with you, Ray. That was very nice to get that super chat. So we will see what happens, but they were filming Captain America 4 and Thunderbolts, so those will probably come out by next summer, and then Blade was just about to film but got delayed by the writer's strike. That said, I think that this writer's strike is probably going to end sooner than you think, because I think it's hurting the studios way, way more than it's hurting writers. Like, writers are used to having hiatuses between seasons of shows that they write. They're used to like waiting for their next paycheck. They can do a strike standing on their head, whereas the money stops flowing real fast for the studios when they can't produce content. So I think that the strike will end fairly soon. I think it'll end within less than 2 months. We'll see. By the way, did the Hulk movie rights come back to Disney this past week? That's the question. Nothing's been announced firmly, but first of all, Marvel signed a distribution deal for Hulk solo movies with Universal. Like, if they did a solo Hulk movie where Hulk is the main star, Universal had the right to distribute that movie, and they signed a 15-year deal when they did this movie, Incredible Hulk, back in 2008. Well, what's this year? If you do the math, it's been 15 years already. Thank you, John. Yeah, production on Paste Pop Pete Infinite Paste is definitely delayed indefinitely. We're thinking we probably will have a start date somewhere around 2030. But it has been 15 years. So there is an excellent chance that means that the rights have come back to Marvel, and that they haven't necessarily announced it yet because they don't have the next project totally locked up, and plus there's a strike, but there's a good chance that they do have the rights back. It all got everybody started looking at the dates of like when the contracts were signed, because the Incredible Hulk all of a sudden popped up on Disney Plus this week, and I didn't think anybody was necessarily expecting that. But if they got the rights back, then maybe this rumored World War Hulk movie that keeps popping up in rumors by various like sort of news movie gossip columnists, maybe that's real. Maybe that's real. I wonder if I'd like that. World War Hulk. I think it could probably work pretty well, but I think it would probably have to be a movie a little bit like Captain America Civil War, where it's almost like half an Avengers movie. Like you have a lot of guest stars. It's just that the main character gets top billing. I don't know. And is Hulk versus Wolverine on Disney Plus now? I don't know. Wasn't that the animated one? I don't know. Oh, everybody wants to see that one. That's the thing, Cap. I'm always pasting. It'd be also interesting to know if Universal still has the distribution rights to Namor as a solo movie. I don't know. Paste Pop Pete is going to replace Kang now. That's what we're hoping for. That's what we're hoping for. I think that I've got a good chance to step into the MCU. And yeah, Avengers Paste Pot Pete Dynasty. Paste Pot Dynasty, right? So stupid. Could the current Avengers team take on Hulk? Thor better not be out sick that day. Who would be the current who would be, do you think, the current Avengers team? I guess it would be like Captain Marvel and Captain America and maybe Kamala Khan and Ant-Man, maybe Doctor Strange. Doctor Strange is pretty big. It's I don't know how canon it is, but if you go on the Disney cruise, there's like a dinner that has like an original video playing of uh, Ant-Man and Wasp using PIM technology to grow and shrink food, and then Ultron attacks the cruise ship, and Captain Marvel, Miss Marvel, and Captain America all show up to help save the day. It's kind of fun. It's on YouTube. If you want to see it, they brought back, oh, who's the actor that voiced Ultron? All of a sudden, James Spader. James Spader. It's kind of fun. I don't know how canon it is or not, but I would guess that's sort of the Avengers team. Well, thank you, everybody. That's really nice. I mean, when I upgrade everything, it'll mean that, like, in large part, that was like funded by the viewers, which is kind of exciting. Yes, yes. Ant-Man does reference the fact that people tell him that he could run up Thanos' butt, and he's like, first of all, gross. Well, I guess we'll learn pretty soon whether Marvel has the rights to Hulk. We'll learn pretty soon. The writer's strike has shut down a couple comic book TV shows, at least for now. Both Daredevil, Born Again, and over at Max the Penguin, both of those have halted production. They had been filming, but they're now indefinitely paused. At the same time, they're both still expected to come out sometime next year. We won't get a firm date until like we get past the strike, I think. Interesting, Colin Farrell recently supported the writer's strike. They were picketing in front of the Paramount building in Times Square. So good for him. He was standing with the writers, and I think that's admirable. Yeah, I like that. A lot. I think Blacklist is still running. I've never seen it, but I'm pretty sure James Spader is doing that. Cool thing about Ultron is you could always bring him back if you have a good story. I mean, he's a robot. Who cares about the Penguin? I don't necessarily care about the character, but if you're going to tell me that you've got Colin Farrell and an HBO budget do a crime show that Matt Reeves is overseeing, yeah, I'm a little interested to see what they could do with all of that. It might be not good, but it might be a good crime show. No, haven't gotten to the sort of comic book reviews of the week yet. Still going through the news, and then we'll do some comics that came out this week. We got more exciting news, though. Let's talk about the Transformers news that we got this week. A lot of people had speculated, does Kirkman have the rights to Transformers or Transformers and G.I. Joe? Well, if you haven't heard yet, Void Rivals basically shows that, yes, he does have the rights, and there is a plan. There is a plan for a shared universe called the Energon universe, which will involve Transformers, G.I. Joe, and some original characters that Kirkman co-created with his artist Lorenzo De Felici in Void Rivals. So all of those are going to take place in a shared universe. As far as like crossing over with each other, probably not a lot, but we'll see. But how exciting is this? And there's a chance I might have known about this and had to keep my mouth shut. Daniel Warren Johnson is going to write and draw Transformers. He has definitely done some commissions in the past. If you're curious how he draws the more than meets the eye robots, I think he draws pretty exciting robots. This is going to debut in October. There was a quote here from Daniel Warren Johnson. This is a dream project for me, and I'm so glad to be adding a new chapter to the decades-long celebration of robots, turning into cars. Also, cab over trucks are so fun to draw. And by the way, he would know one of his early projects was Ghost Fleet with some pretty cool big trucks. So yeah, that is part of the Energon universe. Robert Kirkman is a big fan of Transformers, folks. I'm pretty sure he has a collection of some of the original art that was on the packaging for the 80s Generation 1 Transformers. Pretty sure he's got a bunch of that original art if I remember correctly. Um, so it's a fresh start in a shared universe, but a fresh start for Transformers. From what I understand, it's going to be like like some of his Transformers escaped from like the war on Cybertron, have landed on Earth, but right in the middle of some Decepticons. Optimus Prime is going to sort of be coming to their rescue, something like that. It's going to be a lot of fun, I think. I'm biased. I like Transformers. It was part of what got me into comics. I was a big fan of Transformers before I was into comics, and the first comic that I bought for myself was a Transformers comic book. I had not kept up with the various iterations at Dreamwave and places like IDW. I hadn't really kept up with it, but I do have an affection for the property, and I'm a big fan of what Daniel Warren Johnson works on. Big fan. So I am very curious to see what is who gets used for characters, what the setting is, exactly how they use elements of a shared universe. But that image right there is also like what they use as an ad in the back of Void Rivals. So pretty exciting to read this book and see that right there. That was definitely a lovely surprise. Lovely surprise. Like to see Ninja Funk versus Transformers. That's very different. Very different. I don't know if we'll get giant handgun Megatron. I mean, you could, but I think that tank version is also really cool. I like the idea of the I don't love the color scheme of G2, but I like the idea of a tank Megatron too, I have to admit. Um I'm not the biggest fan of Herb Trimpe's art in general, Makoto, although I do like some of what he did with Hulk. I think that that's where he was best. Don't I'm in the middle with Herb Trimpe. A lot of you want this giant handgun. Okay. Does it need to be a giant one? Beowulf wants a giant handgun too. Yeah, I mean, let's see how many issues of this he even does. But yeah, I mean, I like to see original stuff by Daniel Warren Johnson too, but I like it when he plays in the playground of other things because I think his Wonder Woman story was incredible. I think his Beta Ray Bill story was surprisingly emotional. That's nice to hear that I was able to sort of spread some awareness to somebody else. That's really cool. So I'm looking forward to it. I think not till October, but that's not that far away. That's not that far away. Well, let's see what else we've got because we've got something else related to all this Energon universe stuff. We also are getting GI Joe comics. So there's sort of two pieces to the GI Joe comic book news. First of all, Skybound said that there will be 4 interconnected mini series for GI Joe. The first 2 they've announced. There's going to be a comic called Duke #1 in December. That's with writer Joshua Williamson, who's been writing some stuff I really like lately. Artist Tom Riley. And in January, the following month, we get Cobra Commander #1. Again, Joshua Williamson, artist Andrea Milana. There's going to be 2 more minis and also some sort of a secret series. My guess is the secret series could be some sort of a real crossover dedicated comic with all these properties. But on top of that, just to be clear, there will also be a continuation of Larry Hama's A Real American Hero G.I. Joe comic. That is something he's written 300 issues of. He wrote 155 issues at Marvel starting in 1982. IDW hired him when they got the license, and he continued it there for an additional 145 issues. It will continue, same continuity. It ended on a cliffhanger in issue 300, so story will continue. with the first issue at Skybound, 301st issue overall. I'm excited about that because in my mind, Larry Hama's version of these characters and their personalities and their history is my favorite version. You kind of have to ignore how long it's been going and just sort of like do a rolling timeline like most comics, but some really fantastic, well-rounded characters. Um, and that's its own thing, just to be clear. He gets to continue his own continuity. And one of the Hasbro execs was quoted in this press release as saying, as long as Larry Hama wants to write it, we're going to publish it. If that's true, great. I love that comic. It's sincerely a comic that I think just moves at a breakneck pace, has some great adventure, really good stuff, and he'll surprise you too. Just to be clear, something like 100 issues ago, he killed off Snake Eyes, the most popular character. Now he might be coming back. There is technology in the G.I. Joe universe that has been established since very early on in terms of cloning with Serpentor and in terms of like being able to back somebody's mind up with Dr. Venom's brainwave scanner. Those are both pieces of sci-fi technology that have been sort of established early on. And I think that Snake Eyes might be coming back. But yeah, we've got a lot of like classic characters. The covers will be by Andy Kubert. Andy Kubert. We've got Clutch, Lady J, Storm Shadow, Snake Eyes, Don Moreno, Molto. That's Filipino for Ghost. These two are new characters that he created just for the comic. Stalker, Covergirl, Duke, Roadblock, Scarlet. Great characters. And also, they're going to reprint issue 1 with apparently Hama had an original script that they made some changes in to, Marvel being they, for publication, and Skybound is going to edit it so that his original version comes out. I'm very curious to see. Very curious. So, did they either say or heavily imply Snake Eyes is coming back? Well, there's been 2 Snake Eyes replacements once he died. His memories in the brainwave scanner got put into this girl, Dawn Moreno, who grew up in a Cobra Town, Springfield. So she has access to his memories and abilities, even though she's still herself. Also, with Snake Eyes dead, he's definitely the most feared G.I. Joe. But this soldier, there's a lot of continuity to it, but a soldier got like his vocal cords destroyed and his face destroyed. And he did have a lot of ninja training. So they asked him if he would be willing to basically sign up with G.I. Joe and pretend to be Snake Eyes, like so that like nobody thought that they'd lost such a key soldier. But the brainwave scanner is out there, and Dr. Mindbender, in the last couple of issues at IDW, Dr. Mindbender brought back a new version of Serpentor. Serpentor has been dead for a long time. That he thought would be more controllable. Instead, he's just way more clever. So both the cloning technology and the brainwave scanner are there, and I think Snake Eyes will come back. But anyway, I love this stuff. That's why I could talk about it forever. I'm sure not all of you are that into G.I. Joe. I know that it's a little like skewed more to like an older reader like myself, but yeah, my internet did get fixed, Joshua. I am so glad. I went for a little over 24 hours without it, but it did come back. So thank goodness. Yeah, he's very, very capable. He's an incredible fighter who has ninja training, just to be clear. So he's also good. But Larry's killed off like plenty of both like G.I. Joes that were like action figure characters, toys, as well as some of his original characters. And it just has always meant that the comic felt like it always had some serious stakes to it. People have also literally just retired or separated from G.I. Joe or gotten seriously wounded. So there's some stakes to it. More than you'd think. More than you'd think. I really like G.I. Joe a lot, and I do recommend it. There was a period of the Marvel run in the 90s where they honestly, like, they stopped hiring really good artists, and Larry was having to push some toys that were kind of neon and goofy. It wasn't as good, but the whole IDW run, he didn't have to push any sort of new toys, and he came up with a lot of original characters that are really interesting. I'm going to move on because I could talk about GI Joe forever. But I'm excited to see Transformers and GI Joe come back in a shared universe. This is just something that should be on our radar to watch. Dark Horse got bought, I guess, a couple years ago by the Embracer Group, which is a giant Swedish company. If Daniel Carhunen's still in the chat, Daniel probably knows the Embracer Group. They own like some video game studios and some publishing stuff, and they have a lot of intellectual properties that they've bought. They paid a fortune, I don't know the exact amount, for the rights to Lord of the Rings, like make the Lord of the Rings games and things like that. They've got over 17,000 employees, but they've announced that they are going to be doing some layoffs as part of restructuring, get a little bit leaner, cut some costs, and focus more on intellectual properties that they have developed internally, which is actually a good sign overall for Dark Horse, because while they've announced some cuts to their video game companies and stuff, they have not announced any cuts for Dark Horse, and it seems like Dark Horse is probably honestly pretty valuable to them with some of the stuff that they create. So, going to pass on that news. There's really not a whole lot else to say. Overall, probably good news for Dark Horse. Probably good news. Speaking of Dark Horse, though, I wanted to mention this comic that's been on my radar that I think is pretty cool. Let me answer a question. Sergeant Slaughter is the drill instructor in the cartoon. He only had a single appearance in the comics, just not a character that Larry Hama ever felt like really using or developing much. Kind of a unique character. A little bit more for like the toy and the cartoon. And I like Sergeant Slaughter. I think he's really interesting to meet at the conventions. He's really plugged into the GI Joe community. He knows a lot of the people that do GI Joe content on YouTube and stuff. He's really friendly. I think he looks like he's in better shape these days than he was, like, say, 5 to 10 years ago. He's lost some weight. I think he looks really good. He's a nice guy. But it was never Sergeant Slaughter was never a big part of the comics. Larry Hammond didn't use every character or figure or toy or whatever, just the ones that he felt like he could do something with. So this is a comic that's been on my radar because I like the work of artist Isaac Goodhart. Oops, let me acknowledge a super chat real fast too. Thank you, Larry. Hello, Chris and fellow comic troopers. Can I get a birthday shout out for my man Dan Kennedy, a fellow troper who introduced me to your channel? Dan Kennedy, thank you so much for spreading the gospel of comic tropes. You do my heart good. I hope you have a great birthday. Have a good entire year, in fact, on me. Thank you very much. So this comic is coming out. It's called The Oddly Pedestrian Life of Christopher Chaos. A lot of the sort of idea developed by James Tynion, who's on a roll writing tons of great hit comics. We'll just start with what do you call it? Just start with Something Is Killing the Children. Scripted by Tate Bromball, who works with him on some of the spin-off stuff in the Something Is Killing the Children world. The creators, including artist Isaac Goodhart, were interviewed at CBR. They each had a couple things to say about this mad scientist, young guy, Christopher Chaos. Tate Bromball said, I think that the inherent melodrama found in both horror and coming-of-age stories really connects the two genres, so I tried to feed into that and not hold back too much. Okay. Comment about Isaac on the artwork. He said, the brilliance of Christopher's design is that he naturally stands out. He has a unique color scheme and silhouette, so the reader can always find him quickly in a crowd. With that, I can play up the pedestrian elements of the rest of the world. The whole point is to make Christopher look like a fish out of water. So it's going to balance horror, romance, and coming of age. We shall see what happens. Should be good. Should be good. We've got so much more news, and I'm a full hour in. We gotta speed up, folks. Rest of the news is going to come really fast. Now, as long as we're mentioning something is killing the children, I found this fascinating. So this past week there was the Diamond Distribution Retailer Summit in Dallas. Boom Studios revealed that the orders for Something is Killing the Children number 31, they received initial orders 30% higher than the initial orders for issue 30. This isn't an anniversary issue or anything special. What an anomaly for a comic almost 3 years in to be trending upwards. More people are starting to read this, and like they're picking up the trade paperbacks and stuff, and like getting into it. So this is definitely one of those series, sort of like Walking Dead or something, where it sort of trends up over time as more people discover it. They're willing to read the back issues and get caught up. So wait, what? Hold on. Let me answer this question. I'm trying to say, why did they block American on the G.I. Joe cover? What American did they block? It's because, like, artwork covers logo all the time. I don't think that's a. I think you're reading too much into it if you think that's anything. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. Let's see. So, Something is Killing the Children, issue 31, about to come out. Orders are a third more, basically, than issue 30. And also, it's not like the start of a new arc. It's the final issue of their current story arc. It should be featuring a battle between the main character and Charlotte Cutter. She's also a Black Mask, so she's basically got the same training as the main character, and we're going to see sort of like, a Buffy the Vampire Slayer versus Buffy the Vampire Slayer type thing. The first trade paperback continues to be in the top 5 bestsellers. So I checked that. I was looking, okay, for May, what were the top 20 graphic novels by units? And look at what's number 1. Something is Killing the Children, Volume 1. Also in there, one of the most recent Saga volumes, Supergirl, Woman of Tomorrow. That's been getting a lot of press. Love to see this. Superman's pal, Jimmy Olsen. No idea why that's still up there, but it is a great comic. Do a Powerbomb, the first issue of Saga. Spider-Man Dark Web, like, just came out. Star Wars High Republic Season 2, Volume 1, pretty recent. Department of Truth, Volume 1. Flashpoint is kind of a perennial bestseller. So a lot of these make sense, but look at that. The number 1 best-selling graphic novel these days, Something is Killing the Children. So people are still discovering it. But I also love seeing some of these other books, because look, 1, 2, 3, 4, like, I've got 6 of the top 10. I've got 6 of the top 10 personally. I love Saga. I love this Jimmy Olsen book. I loved Do a Powerbomb. I loved Woman of Tomorrow. Yeah, these are all fantastic. All fantastic. I recommend all of them. All of them. Garth Ennis is returning to Marvel. He hasn't written there for a while, but Marvel had a press release for this book, which will come out in October, sort of a horror book for them in their Black, White, and Blood series. It's basically just anthology type books that are printed in black and white with red. Coming out in October, time for Halloween. 3 stories. Garth Ennis writing a story with artist Rachel Stott on what happened to Daredevil in the Marvel Zombies universe. Alex Segura teaming up with Javi Fernandez to show Spider-Man going up against his zombified loved ones. Again, this is all in the Marvel Zombies universe. And Ashley Allen is going to debut as a writer. I'm not familiar with her work. Teaming up with Justin Mason for a Moon Knight story. Yeah. Darth Vader, exactly. They're doing all sorts of characters for their Black, White, and Red series. Heck yeah, I love Ennis. Thumbs up. Happy to see Garth return to Marvel. I think Garth Ennis and zombies is a good fit, so that should be interesting. That should be very interesting. Ennis is the man. I'll read anything he does. To reveal what happened to Daredevil. Yikes. With Garth Ennis writing, that could be anything. It's probably not going to be a happy ending. Has Garth ever written Jonah Hex? That does feel like a good fit. I don't know. I don't know. This is why I need like a producer here running research and switching camera angles or something for me so that I can just focus on jokes and riffing with somebody. I need somebody sort of like if somebody else is reading, I'm gonna have a good joke when somebody mentions like Marvel Zombies. But when I say it myself, it's harder to come up with the humor. A very Garth title. Yeah. Let's see. Make the cats do it. I should put my cats to work. Good thinking. Oh yeah, Jimmy Palmiotti does do good Jonah Hex stuff. No, no question there. I like that. I need a sidekick. Maybe. I think I need like a producer someday or something, but you kind of need somebody you trust and can pay to do that. So we'll see. We've got two more Marvel comics coming up that I thought were interesting enough to mention. Alyssa Wong is going to take over writing Captain Marvel. That's going to happen in October. A new volume starting, basically just in time for her movie. So she's going to write it. She wrote Doctor Aphra, which I honestly think is a great, great Star Wars comic. Very cool. It's basically like a slightly evil Indiana Jones character within the world of Star Wars. She's an archaeologist that gets herself into a lot of trouble with the Empire, crime syndicates, and stuff like that. It's like always a cat and mouse game where she's just like barely one step ahead and staying alive from all these people that want her dead. Dr. Aphra, I sincerely like. I think she's a really cool character. It's going to be drawn by Jen Bazaldua, who recently did Red Goblin. But this new outfit here, that's done by Jen Bartel. And I mean, if you don't like Jen Bartel's covers, I don't know what to say. She's a great artist. And this is a really interesting uniform. I think the jacket's a cool touch. We've still sort of got the sash. We've got the same colors. We've got the boots. Interesting here, the sleeves rolled up, which we've seen in the trailers for the new Captain Marvel movie. What's her name? Something Brie. Brie Larson's got sort of the exposed forearms. I don't know. I like it. It's got the littlest bit of a military feel, and being called Captain Marvel, I kind of like it. Anyway, the story is going to involve Carol Danvers starting the story imprisoned somewhere, and she needs to team up with a new ally to face a threat to the entire omniverse. So cool. Yeah, a little bit of a military look. Not Dr. Afro, Dr. Aphra. You know, Star Wars names. Let's see. Alyssa is killing it right now. Definitely going to pick this up. Their Deadpool run is awesome. Cool. That outfit is smashing. Jen Bartel, man. Jen Bartel. She needs a cosmic tuba. Okay. Love the tweaked uniform. Better than the old outfit. I think it's good. I just see MJ military jacket. Don't quite know what you mean there, but okay. Oh my God. I don't think anyone would be nuts enough to mention Marcus again. That better left forgotten. I made an episode if you're curious about that. Avengers number 200, one of the worst issues Marvel made. No one wants to take credit for the script. There's like about 5 credited writers. None of them want to take credit. They all pass it off. I don't know what the difference is between the omniverse and the multiverse. I just took that from Marvel's press release. I don't know what the difference is. Oh, a Michael Jackson jacket. Okay. Yeah, I see that a little bit, but that's okay. Maybe she'll do the moonwalk. She's a cosmic character, so she could be on the moon. This is where I'd have a producer hit the sound cue for some very light applause and awkward coughs. One more book that I thought sounded interesting. Just having trouble with my mouse. Blade's getting a new series. And I'm interested this time because the writer's going to be Brian Hill. And Brian Hill's written both some good comic books, like detective comics. Also written some interesting TV stuff. He was on Ash versus Evil Dead. He was on Titans. So cool writer, artist Elena Casagrande. She's done stuff like Black Widow, Doctor Who, create her own stuff. In the press release, she went into a lot of detail, more than like I felt like it would have been a block of text, but she was talking about like how she wanted to give some real thought to making Blade seem unique with his own fighting style that was like realistic and believable, but like his. So she said she put a lot of thought into how he would fight to sort of like come up with his character. And I thought that was a nice angle. As far as the story, which is coming out in July 19th, Brian Hill said that Blade would be unknowingly unleashing Adana, an ancient evil, and that Marvel's entire supernatural underworld will be thrown into turmoil. It's going to be up to Blade to fix his mistake. Interesting starting point. Joe Dent saying, if you wear clothes that are very, very fitting and small, sometimes you have to wear filled sleeves, lest people see that the sleeves actually end halfway up your forearm. Well, you've got it here from, what do you call it? Our fashion guru. That's your new title, Joe. You're the fashion guru. I don't know if Brian ever finished Postal, but artist of that was Isaac Goodhart, who is now doing the Pedestrian Life of Christopher Chaos that I was mentioning earlier. How many times have they tried? I think that there's a lot of characters that can get like about a year or two worth of stories and they sort of like go away. They're not all going to be Avengers, Spider-Man, Fantastic Four. They've got a lot of characters like Doctor Strange, Shield, Blade. I'll even say Captain Marvel. They come and go. They're popular for like a little while. Their interest kind of fades. They take a small break. They come back. I think that all comic book superhero publishers have a lot of characters like that. They're interesting, and it all depends on the exact execution. Every once in a while, they get a really good one. Even Deadpool has had a bunch of popular runs and some that kind of fizzle. So, there's just a bunch of characters like that, in my opinion. But I think that Brian Hill is a good fit for it. Yeah, Ghost Rider. Sometimes there's good Ghost Rider series, but eventually interest sort of fizzles a little bit. Some of these characters aren't necessarily. They don't all have to be Spider-Man. They don't have to be. So, I don't report on every auction. That would be crazy, but I thought that this was pretty interesting. Golden Auctions. They recently, this past week, had a 3.0 graded Action Comics and a 7.0 Superman #1. So pretty important issues for Superman. And they sold at auction for a lot of money. $1.5 million for a 3.0 graded Action Comics #1 and $1.62 million for the Superman #1 in a 7.0. Lot of money. I just see these numbers for these key issues that are graded going up and up and up. And I see that a lot, like, just to be clear, the speculator market in the 90s and even like a few years ago for like just regular comics, people getting into them and thinking that they're going to definitely be able to flip it for more. There's going to be a ceiling that these graded copies at auction hit. There just is. And I feel like we're kind of past what the average collector can successfully pay for these. There's only so many really rich people that can collect these. So I think we're hitting some kind of crazy numbers there when we get into like $1 million. I think we're hitting some really crazy numbers there, where there's just not going to be enough of an audience that like there's probably not like 20 people in the world that like are actively searching for these kind of things. I don't know. Maybe I'm coming up with too small a number there, but I just don't think. Yeah, you guys are sort of seeing what I'm thinking. Like that is a lot for a 3.0, bonkers amount for a 3.0. I've always said, if you're collecting, a 3.0 is better than a nothing. If that's what you're collecting. Like, look, if I could afford an Action Comics #1, an actual copy that was in, say, like a 1.0, if I could afford that, I'd probably get it. But I say afford, I'm not going to sell my house to get this comic. So I just feel like it's really high, these numbers, really, really high. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe maybe there's still room for these to keep climbing, but I really think well, these were Action Comics #1 would have been before paper was rationed. Actually, I think Superman #1 was also before paper was rationed. So there were still a lot of copies published, but they weren't kept. Oh, if I could afford a back issue, yes. Personally, the one I actually would want more than others, I personally would want a Ninja Turtles #1 first print. That's what I would want. I sincerely would. I would take that over, say, Amazing Fantasy 15 or Detective Comics 27. That's what I would want. But I'm never going to be able to afford that either. I've seen the prices. I couldn't afford that. Here's an opportunity for folks that might be over in the UK. And I do know that I've got some viewers of this show over there, so I thought it was worth passing on this news. And if you're not, maybe you at least find it interesting to look into later to try some of these books. So London has a cartoon museum, and there's also a British graphic novel publisher called Self-Made Hero. And the two have teamed up to launch the first graphic novel award for 2023. So some of the things that you need to be eligible are you have to be a UK resident. You can't have previously published comics. I mean, I'm sure if you self-printed something, that's not a disqualification. And you have to be at least 18 years old. For submission, it needs they need at least 8 finished pages and between 15 to 30 pages, no less, no more. Just maybe you could do less actually, but no more. Describing what the whole story is about, so that they like know what they'd potentially be investing in, and they are creating essentially this sort of grant to help you publish your first graphic novel. So if you Google things like that, like Cartoon Museum or Self-Made Hero, or just the first graphic novel award, you're going to find an official website that has those submission details. And yeah, if you're a UK resident or you have a friend in the UK who likes to draw, maybe it's worth telling them about this. Maybe they'd be able to get their comic book published with some help. Nothing wrong with a little bit of help. I think that's cool. I'd even take probably a low grade, just to be clear. Hey, a TMNT third print is still pretty damn cool. Congratulations. Congrats. The big money is on Nightcat #1. It's going to have the comic Tropes effect. I talked about it on my show, and all those copies, poof, disappear. For X-Men #1, you could probably sell it for anywhere from $1 to $10. It's the most published American comic, so that one a little tough to sell for anything. Let's see. You think even a complete amateur could make a submission? If it was interesting enough and clean enough, I don't think that they need a professional style so much as a readable style with a really interesting story. I think that they've published some other things, and yeah, I think that a lot of people would be up for potentially getting that. $5 million at auction. Nightcat #1 graded 2.5. That sounds about right. Yeah, that sounds about right. And I'll always highlight a comment complimenting me. Thank you. Yeah, I think I did a pretty good job with that. Very ambitious with the album. Yeah, they had the whole album. They're promoting it with a comic book. It was interesting. It was interesting. they charge you to take away the Ravage 2099. You guys will think I'm crazy. I actually remember kind of enjoying Ravage by Stanley. Ravage 2099 I thought was kind of fun. I've reread it, and I don't know why I liked it as much when I was younger, because it's not that good, but I liked it a little bit. It fizzles out kind of quickly, just to be clear. Ultraman. Ultraman is becoming more popular as Japan pushes it more in other countries. In fact, just this past week, the company that owns Ultraman is called Tsuburaya Fields Media and Pictures Entertainment. They announced plans to expand their licensing of Ultraman. Some of the things that they'll be doing include Ultraman Z will be dubbed into English, that TV show, and put on their YouTube channel. Fun. They're in the process of making a CG animated movie for Netflix. And they happen to announce that there will be a mini-series crossover with Marvel characters, including Spider-Man, Iron Man, Captain Marvel. Looks like we're getting Ultraman, Ultra 7, and one other guy that I don't know who that is. I'm just not enough of an expert, but that could be fun. Johnny Young Bosch is the new Ultraman in the new dub. Wasn't he the Black Power Ranger, the second Black Power Ranger? Am I remembering that? There is a Tropes effect in comic sales. Didn't Daniel Warren Johnson thank you for boosting his sales during your interview? He did. You're right. And Nick Pitara also said that, like, after he did an interview, he got a pretty nice boost for his crowdfunded book, Axe Wielder John. So there's a little bit of there can be an effect. Ultraman Toro. EJ would know. EJ has done some covers for Ultraman for Marvel because they've done Ultraman comics, but this will be a crossover comic with some Marvel characters, which is pretty cool. And by the way, EJ, since you're there, I want you to know I am super excited personally to see Daniel Warren Johnson's take on Transformers, but I also hope that you get another opportunity to draw them, as long as that's something you're still interested in doing, because I think you do an exceptional job drawing them. And drawing Transformers is not easy, folks, because you can't just block it out with human body proportions. Transformers come in all sorts of weird shapes and sizes. So it takes a lot of planning to get that right. I think that even if Cartoonist Kayfabe doesn't necessarily have as many subscribers as me, they've got an extremely loyal fan base. And I'll consider myself part of that, just to be clear. I think that those guys make a great show. There is a kayfabe effect. When they mention certain comics, you just see them disappear off of eBay, or the prices just go really up. Yeah. A gun that transforms into a bigger gun. I'll tell you what the worst transforming stuff ever was. It was not anything from Transformers. It was from the GoBots line, and they actually pushed a movie on it. They did an animated GoBots movie, if anybody remembers, where they introduced the Rock Lords, and they transformed from a robot into a rock. What? Look, I think I've got one or two Transformers. Hold on 2 seconds. I'm going to pull something down from up here. When I went to like Japan one time, I just picked this up randomly. This is here. I'll make this bigger. Hold on. It was a triple changer, Headmaster triple changer, Blitzwing. And that's kind of fun, right? I mean, he transforms from a jet to a tank to a robot. His head transforms from a robot into his own head, and his gun transforms into, I think it's like a mammoth. So, like, a lot of fun things, right? A robot that turns into a rock. That doesn't sound like a lot of fun to me. That doesn't sound like a lot of fun to play with. But anyway, yeah, I don't know why I got this. It was at a good price, and I just kind of picked it up impulsively. Rock Lords. That is one where you're thinking, like, what were they thinking? Like, what would be less fun for a robot to transform into? Like a piece of paper that was crumpled up? I mean, it's a rock. Oh, my rock sits next to your rock. What's he do? Nothing. He's a rock. He transforms back into a robot and has a fight. What? If there was a GoBot that transformed into a tree, I am not aware of that. That sounds hilarious. Yo, Tit Goblin, that's fun too. Are you gonna play with like French fries? No, but for like a free pack-in toy as a novelty, that's kind of funny. It's amusing. Okay, you transform from a burger into a robot or whatever. It's silly, but it's funny. A rock is just so boring. Like, what are you going to transform into a carton of milk? Ugh. Well, yes. That you found the exception to the rule. Everything, everywhere, all at once did have a pretty awesome scene of two rocks talking. Oops, almost missed this. Thank you, Amen. I just wish Toho could expand Kamen Rider more in the West. There is an audience for it here. There probably is. I am interested in knowing more about Kamen Rider, but I did not love Shin Kamen Rider, and I loved Shin Godzilla, and I really enjoyed Shin Ultraman. Shin Kamen Rider was weird pacing. I like the ideas, but I didn't love that movie. Let's see what other news we have here. I've got like about 3 more pieces, and then we've got some news. This one blew my mind. I've done an episode before about Osamu Tezuka, and I'd love to do more because I really admire the godfather of manga. He was definitely a creative force. Just so many ideas, so many fun ideas. Well, the 50th anniversary of his character Blackjack is coming up. Okay. And so this fall, Tezuka Productions is going to release a new chapter created entirely by AI. I question that decision as compared, like, I guess the goal is to make it look as much as possible like the late great Osamu Tezuka did it. Tezuka's son approved it. And the technology, just to explain, is based on ChatGPT-4, features technology developed by NEDO. That's the New Energy and Industrial Technology Development Organization based in Japan. They collaborated with Keio University's Faculty of Science and Technology professor Satoshi Kurihara. And I guess, as I say, the goal is to just make it look like Osamu Tezuka drew it, which I sort of admire, but just hire an actual artist. If you haven't like read it or seen the anime or anything, Blackjack is like an unlicensed, mysterious doctor. He travels the world curing mystery ailments. Sometimes he also sells his services to like the highest bidder. So he's got some weird morality, but he's brilliant, and he just goes around solving medical mysteries. It's a cool ass comic, to be honest. There's nothing quite like Blackjack. There really isn't. So yeah. Yeah, I feel like just hire a good artist. Just hire a good artist. AI on the father of Japanese comics, very disrespectful. I think that they're going to get some backlash because as much as we don't seem to appreciate AI art for comics here in the West, I think that the Japanese audience is even more against it. I really do. I really think that they're more against AI art over there than we are over here. Um, I like I say, I imagine the only reason they're doing it is to try to make it look like Tezuka himself made the art. That's my only thinking. But I would have just hired a really good artist to draw a respectful interpretation. That's what I will be talking about some great new reads. There were a couple really great comics this week. I will be talking about that shortly. That's one of the reasons why sometimes it's good to have a library card so that you can read some comics digitally. Like probably can find Blackjack through your library. I would guess. I don't know. Okay, well, fair enough. But I've seen also a lot of news articles that like AI is also not loved. So only the artist can give consent. Basically, he's passed, so his estate and company owns the rights, and they have like his son and his company have given their rights to do a chapter, not like a whole book, but a chapter. Yo, Michael, thank you. Wow, tonight I'm doing well. I must be on. I think you may have missed my earlier super chat. Okay, hold on, Michael. I did not mean to. Let me check. Oh, thank you, Michael. I did miss that, and my sincere apologies. Sometimes when I have the news up, I don't see all of the chat, and I'm sorry for that. Michael, thank you very much. And he says 15 to 30 page description seems a bit much. Most books can be described in fewer pages, even one. Um, Possibly. I think that they possibly, I think that like you could try with less and see what happens. They've said that much, but maybe they don't have as much experience and they don't know that you could do it with less. Maybe they just don't know that. I'm trying to give them the benefit of the doubt there because yeah, that's for the first graphic novel fund. I feel like this is a little disrespectful. I don't love it. I don't mind if they hired, like, for instance, I love the book Pluto by Naoki Urasawa, where he got the permission of Tezuka Productions and reinterpreted one of the best Astro Boy stories into a gritty crime drama called Pluto. It's a fantastic, fantastic manga. If they had hired somebody like Naoki to do a chapter of Blackjack for the 50th anniversary, I would have been doing backflips. But that's not what they did. We've got two more pieces of news that are just sort of fun. Don't know if you saw it, but the One Piece trailer debuted yesterday. That's for Netflix's show. It's going to be an 8-episode series, and they announced the release date. That's coming out August 31st. So very soon, just to be clear, very, very soon. And we saw a bunch of details in it. We saw what they looked like, the Straw Hat Pirates. We saw Shell Town for the first time. That's one of the first islands that the crew ends up on. We saw Buggy the pirate, who definitely looked a little creepier than I think he does in the comics. And we saw a bunch of the fighting styles. We saw Usopp with his slingshot. That looked pretty darn accurate. We saw Nami with her staff. We saw Sanji give this perfect kick of kicking a gun out of somebody's hand without losing his cool. Roanoa Zoro with his 3-blade fighting style looked kind of cool to me. As far as Luffy's stretching powers, little weird, but I think it's always going to look weird when you sort of stretch somebody like that. Well, I think that is one of the concessions that you make when you go live action. Is it worth doing though? Is it worth doing? Jim Zub is comics writer who I really respect, and he said what's the point? He's like, you're never going to come up with a live action thing that's better than the animated version. Not really. And I countered, I was like, well, but couldn't you also just see it as like a different adaptation of the original source material? Because you could come up with a good adaptation of the manga in live action. His argument was like, it's a straight pipeline of the manga becomes a literal adaptation of the anime. That becomes the accepted and beloved version. And there's a lot of evidence of failed anime adaptations. Cowboy Bebop, Ghost in the Shell, at least over here in the United States, plenty of other recent ones. The only thing I could think of to sort of counter that is I did like the live action 2-movie adaptation that Japan made to adapt Death Note, and that was pretty different from their anime version. So I do think you could theoretically still do a good adaptation of the manga if you sort of try to set aside what they did with the anime. But we shall see very soon, obviously. We shall see very soon whether this is worth it or not. Yeah, Oda is working directly in terms of saying he's signing off on everything they're doing. So he's putting his name to it. That's a fair point. A couple people saying that Alita Battle Angel worked. Yeah, it did overall. Yeah, it wasn't exceptional, but I thought it was good. I thought it was pretty good. A lot of people Speed Racer does divide people, but it is very unique, you know? Like, they tried to do something different than a literal adaptation of the anime. So, I think there are a couple good versions. I don't know if One Piece will be that or not. Uh, it's got a lot to overcome with so much history there. So many manga chapters, so many anime episodes. It's what people know and they've known for so long. But I did like some of what I was seeing, to be honest. I thought that Zoro, with his three sword fighting style, looked pretty darn cool. I've got one last piece of news that's just amusing, and then we'll talk about the comics that came out this week. Last thing, also tied to manga, there is now an Attack on Titan drink. That's right, folks. G Fuel, who definitely did not sponsor this episode, just to be clear, has announced Spinal Tap. What is that? It's going to be a green tea flavored fuel, bunch of caffeine, but no sugar. Nice. I've had G Fuel before, by the way. I think it tastes pretty good. I think the G Fuels that I've tried do taste good. I really do. And it's nice that there's no sugar in it. I like that. But yeah, in the manga, the spinal fluid of Titans can turn you into a Titan. I think if I had to guess, that probably won't happen with the G Fuel Titan Spinal Tap. I would guess that won't turn you into Titan. I don't know. I don't know. So, let's talk about the comics that came out this week. Because there were a couple interesting ones. Let me come up with an order here. And turn on this light and swap the camera style to this. Yeah. Look at this. Battle Chasers issue 10 by Joe Madureira came out. It has been so many years since Battle Chasers came out. And Joe Mad was always a pretty slow creator when he did Battle Chasers. His sort of what do you call it? Sort of steampunk fantasy book. Well, he brought it back. And you know, this is what you have to get through to get caught up, because I read this back in the day and I don't remember it. It has been way too long, but I was curious. I loved Joe Mad at the time. I did. We've got all the main characters. I was like, oh yeah, I'd forgotten about like the martial paladins and stuff. I'd forgotten about them. And the story so far. The first 9 issues is condensed here. Now, Joe Mad is not drawing it. He is writing it, and he's hired Ludo Lullaby to draw. But I will say, look at that. It's not Joe Mad, but it is very, very, very similar. Very similar. So if you're a massive fan of Battle Chasers, you're probably going to love this. For what it's worth, I thought that it was kind of fun. I liked a lot of the art. I do think a little bit of the storytelling here and there was slightly confusing. For instance, there's like this guy throwing knives, and this guy comes out of the shadows. And then I thought that this bad guy was grabbing him from the head, and was a little confused when I turned the page and he looked totally different. It took me a couple pages to realize, no, this big guy snuck up on him. There's 2 bad guys. Oh, okay. I've never seen Ludo Lullaby's work before, but you're saying did great work on World of Warcraft comics. Okay. I haven't read Kaiju number 8 yet, but I probably will. I do like Kaiju, so I'll read it at some point. I haven't read it yet, though. New artist. Yep, new artist, but obviously draws in a very similar style. It's if you're super familiar with Joe Mad, you can tell that it's not the same, but there's a lot of similarities. I can't say that I loved this, but I don't know that I ever loved the story. I liked Joe Mad's art, and it's interesting to see that style come back. You know, like manga influenced certainly. Um, but like, like lots of heavy shadows, lots of big, thick hands and feet. It's sort of fun action. I wouldn't say I really got refamiliarized too well with the main characters in this. And by the way, we really only see a significant amount of Red, Monica, and Garrison. So we don't really get a great sense of them. There are some interesting villains, though. The villains are fairly interesting. And we get a little bit of Gully and Calabretto, as well as the bad guy from the last couple of issues, which, again, I'm sorry, I don't remember a comic from 20 years ago very well anymore. It's so strange to me that this came back and that it didn't come back first with, say, like a trade paperback reprint of issues 1 through 9. That it came back with just like issue 10, as though it was just time for it to come out. I don't know. This was a novelty, a curiosity that I sort of picked up. There was plenty of art that I liked, but I also think that like even the manga influence, like manga has moved on from like what influenced Battle Chasers back in the late 90s. So it doesn't really necessarily look like today's manga. A little bit, but not totally. It's all right. This one was fun, though. This is a book I've been picking up. It's only going to be a 5-issue miniseries. This is issue 4 of it. Clobberin Time. Each issue features the Thing teaming up with a different character. This one teams him up with Dr. Doom. And it finally sort of spells out who their bad guy is. He's this guy from the future, and they've got a cool sci-fi plot that has some twists and turns. By the way, I do appreciate that, like, Dr. Doom gives Ben this like flying harness for fighting these monsters out in space, and that's obviously very reminiscent of a Jack Kirby outfit for Orion. So that's a kind of cool nod to Ben Grimm's past. It was fun, and there's some funny stuff in it too. Like, for instance, they have to work together, but this is the food that Dr. Doom serves to Thing. Just this weird fish and, bird beaks and eyes and stuff. And it says it's a Latverian delicacy called chivap chichi. And I don't know whether Dr. Doom's making that up or if that's real, but it's gross either way. It's kind of funny. It's legit, both funny and exciting. It's got some cool stuff going on. I recommend this if you haven't read it. If you just want a cool adventure comic with some good humor. The X-Cellent. And my copy looks a little weird here. There's a little bit of warping. My cat spilled a cup of water on the cover. Not the whole cup, just a bunch of it. Whatever. It happens when you've got kittens. But The X-Cellent is a fantastic satire of social media stuff, with the bad guy like having done this spell where if he gets 1 million acolytes, which basically means 1 million followers on social media, he will literally become a god. And he's just he's horrible to his teammates. Even the good guys, the ecstatics, are pretty shallow, but they're the good guys. It's just really funny. I always love Mike Allred and Laura Allred artwork. It feels like Milligan and Allred haven't lost a step since doing X-Statics, like, what, 10, 15 years ago? Yeah. The best thing about this is that Zeitgeist, the villain, is a bad guy that's loathsome, and you love to hate him. You've probably heard that term before. You love to hate him. He's like that. This is one of the best villains I've seen in a Marvel comic in a long time. Zeitgeist is just horrible. It's really good. It's really good. He's so awful. He's so awful. I can't wait for him to hopefully get defeated and everything. Haircut looking sharp. I did get a haircut. I didn't really style it or anything today, but thank you. Appreciate the kind words. Thank you, JL. Yeah, just a great villain. So here we go. Yes, just to be clear, let me highlight this. The X-Cellent is a direct sequel. Absolutely. Some time has passed, but The X-Cellent is a direct sequel to X-Statix. And to be clear, they took over the book X-Force, but like with their original characters, just for a few issues. Then it became rebranded as X-Statix. And then they've done 2 volumes of The X-Cellent. There was a small, like, sort of hiatus between these, small hiatus. It equally focuses on the X-Statix, like, Mr. Sensitive, Dupe, and the rest of the team, and the bad guys. It's equally focused on both sides. And it's got a great bad guy team that a lot of them die. Zeitgeist definitely goes through his team very fast. Very fast. But it's good. Sort of. They were going to have Princess Diana. They were not going to have her come back as a zombie. They were going to have her come back to life because she was a mutant. Her powers got activated when she died, supposedly. But when they solicited that, it got a lot of backlash. So they redrew it slightly and rescripted it to just be a generic celebrity, not Princess Diana. Oh, this mouse is driving me nuts. There we go. Let's talk about Void Rivals. So this is the book that everybody was chattering about. I think that there was an episode of Arrested Development where Tobias says, "Oh, I'm always so busy making love to my wife and hearing the clattering of her breasts." He just couldn't successfully make it sound like he was straight. Void Rivals. So what is the secret? Well, you've probably already heard it, to be honest, because this news has been kind of everywhere. But the overall story for Void Rivals, before there's any spoilers or anything, is that 2 warring aliens crash on a desolate planet, and the only way they're going to survive and get off this desolate planet is to work together, maybe salvage the parts from one of their ships and put it onto the other ship. Okay. So that's basically the story of stuff that we've seen before in Enemy Mine was a movie with Lou Gossett Jr. and Dennis Quaid. It's pretty good. We've also seen this in there was an Outer Limits episode that was kind of like this. It's a premise that exists, is all I'm saying. But what it does differently is just sort of the actual execution of their personalities and their looks and their technology. And they're original characters, but what we learn, and I'm going to spoil something here because it's out there, folks, and it's a spoiler, but it's also the hook of this story moving forward. And this is the first issue. The hook is, while they're working on trying to salvage their ships, they're having all sorts of setbacks and everything, they eventually come across a crashed ship here. And when they try to power it up, what happens is it transforms into Jetfire, the Autobot Jetfire. This has been a stealth relaunch of Transformers, a new continuity. It's going to be called the Energon Universe. Void Rivals is legit about these characters, like these 2 alien races having a war. And there's a twist to it that I'm not giving away towards the end. But it takes place within a universe I guess in the modern day even, that has Transformers and technically also G.I. Joe. Now, there's no G.I. Joe in this. How could there be? This is taking place in deep space. G.I. Joe is not known for going on intergalactic missions. But who knows? Maybe teaming up with the Transformer, 1 or 2 of them could find their way out here. But the Transformers go throughout space. The Transformers will probably be that sort of middle ground where they could interact a little with these warring aliens. They could also interact on Earth with G.I. Joe. So Transformers will sort of be that middle ground. But surprise, surprise, called Void Rivals. all we knew is it was original story created by Kirkman and De Felici, but unknown to us until it actually came out, although it was like speculated as a possibility. Um, it takes place in the world of the Transformers. So that was unexpected, honestly. Like there was no real hint to that until it happens. Uh, it's interesting. It's interesting. I do recommend it. Do I think that the story so far is exceptional? No, but it has a couple twists and turns. The artwork I think is very solid and very clean and clear. I think that it looks really cool. I think it looks alien. I think there's some interesting bits of technology like this. There's a guy and a girl, okay, and the guy alien has sort of like a robot on his hand. His hand is sentient, and it gives him advice on scanning and what he could potentially do to make stuff work. It sort of works as his engineer. I think it looks nice. I think it's an interesting enough premise that I'm going to explore this some more and see where it goes. So who gets the rights to Void Rivals once the license is up? Well, to Void Rivals? So technically, I'm pretty sure that this would be owned by Hasbro, just to be clear. Let me double check. In the indicia. Void Rivals, published by Image Comics, blah, blah, blah. I'm looking for, like, if it says who owns it. I don't know. It's printed really light, so bear with me as I read this. I don't think it makes it clear right here, but I'm pretty sure that Void Rivals would technically be owned by Hasbro. That Kirkman got this license. He's doing some cool stuff with like original characters, but he's creating it with the understanding that it works within like a Hasbro universe. We'll see what's going to happen. Probably not too interested personally in the latest Liefeld Deadpool book. Probably not. Let's see. I really enjoyed Void Rivals. I will be adding it to my pool list. That's the list where you toss them into the pool, right? No, I know you meant pull list. All right. Beowulf owns it, so forget it. Yeah, big fan of the Handroid. Handroid sold me on the book. It's a cool little idea for like world building. Absolutely. We'll see what happens. We'll see what happens. I'm definitely excited to read a bit more of it, and I'm super stoked. Like I say, like the ad in the back here telling me that Daniel Warren Johnson's going to take a crack at a new Transformers continuity. I'm all in, baby. Look, final book, and as much as I liked Void Rivals, and I really did, my pick of the week for best overall comic, which is also saying something considering how much I really enjoy the X-Cellent and Clobberin Time. It is saying something. My pick of the week is Night Fever. That's the newest original graphic novel by Ed Brubaker and Sean Phillips. They're taking a bit of a hiatus from their Reckless graphic novels, and they tell the story of a gentleman who is a book publicist or something. He's at a book convention in Paris. He can't sleep. He goes out at night and finds some people at like this weird, maybe sort of sex club or something like that. He gambles and he pretends to be somebody else. He also is befriended by a weird guy that takes him on all sorts of adventures through the night while he can't sleep, just sort of like beating people up to get some stolen money back. And he's got some weird jobs that he has to do, like stealing some files and stuff. And meanwhile, the main character like has a wife and kids at home, and he does sort of miss them, but he kind of gets intoxicated with getting to be somebody else and getting to have an adventure. It's great, folks. There's some great twists and turns. I say that a lot, but there's some really great stuff. Sean Phillips with his son Jacob Phillips on colors. Great artists that really can do like I love the Spotted Blacks can really do crime story like nobody else. And I just love Brubaker's narration, captions, and dialogue. It's kind of it's to the point. It's not overly flowery. It gives you a sense of the character and not tons more. Some nice surreal scenes where the main character is tripping on some drugs. Just great book. Night Fever. Strongly recommend it. Just to be clear, Void Rivals has already sold out of its first printing. Sold out right away. They're going to issue a second printing of Void Rivals #1. So it's probably not going to be hard for you to find this story. This one, it depends on what your comic shop orders as to how easy it might be to grab this one. And it might be easier to order it from, say, Amazon or something. I don't know. I like to buy stuff from my comic book store to support them. That's what I like to do. But great book. That's my pick of the week. In a week that, like, I didn't buy tons of stuff, but had some strong contenders. I liked what Void Rivals does. I like the fun of Clobberin Time. Battle Chasers, it's whatever. I got that as out of curiosity. X-Cellent was also really fun. I can't wait to see how this comic wraps up. There's probably not a lot more to it. I'm curious if anybody else out there picked up a comic that I didn't read that they would recommend. Let's see. Ed Brubaker and Steve Soderbergh should team up. Yeah, that would be interesting. That would definitely be interesting. But I think Ed Brubaker is pretty busy doing like a live action adaptation of Criminal. Just about to open this book. Got a signed book play too. That's great. That's really nice to hear, Thomas. Congrats. Going to my local comic shop tomorrow. Appreciate all your hard work to help my pull list. I beef it up, don't I? Know that we all love you and wish you well in your health journey. Well, folks, overall, the news there is good. Is my shoulder back to normal? No. Let's see. I'm trying to like lift my arms straight up. Let me see if I can sort of get a good angle. That's kind of high. That's fairly high. This is better. I can stretch it back. That's as high as I can get it. And that hurts a little. But overall, my shoulder, that's some pretty good flexibility. So that's good. And the other thing that was worrying me about internal stuff, we got that checked off as kidney stones. It was unfortunate, but I'm past that. We got cancer ruled out. Some very unpleasant tests, but like got that ruled out. So shoulders just taking me a little while to get back to normal. It can hurt sometimes. My nails are still polished. My nails are polished, but I redid them actually. Still like gray, but like the accent, I decided to give sort of a glittery blue this time. But I did that one myself. I did it for the first time because my coworker bought himself a nail salon, and I was like, I've never gotten a manicure pedicure. I'm going to get one. Very relaxing. And while I was there, I was like, the hell with it. I think it would look cool if I painted my nails. So I did, and I kind of like it. A couple people commented in my latest Comic Tropes video about Nightcap. They were like, most people were like, hey, I think your nails look cool. Hey, thanks. I think it looks cool too. Just trying something different, and I like it. But a couple people were like, oh, is Chris gay? His nails are painted. And I was like, it's a little bit of a jump. And I mean, I'm happily married actually to a beautiful woman. So I don't care what people think, but no, I'm not gay. I just happen to like coloring these. I just like coloring them. It was not great having the kidney stones. It was not great, but I'm past that. And I'm eating healthy, I started to think that the shoulder and the kidney stones were a product of the fact that I'm diabetic and that I wasn't paying enough attention to my, sugar intake. Both doctors said, no, probably not. They're just something that you got, unfortunately. But it did prompt me to just put a concerted effort into eating healthier. So yeah, back to just, like vegetables and meats. And that's about it. No processed foods, no sugar, very little carbs, no bread by itself really. So I feel good. I feel good. And I think I'm losing weight. I don't know. I'm trying to like sort of look at myself and like get a sense like I mean, I need to lose more. I need to lose more, no question. I'm still a fatty. I bet I'm even still classified as obese, but I think I look better and I feel better. I will say I feel better. So somebody had asked about health. No pizza, no pizza anymore. Except sometimes I can make a cauliflower crust pizza, and that's actually not too bad for me. That's not too bad. I wouldn't say it's really a goth phase. I highlighted the wrong one, but thank you, Beowulf. No, not a goth phase. Just having fun. Just having fun. I thought it looked cool. That's all it is. Just thought it looked cool. Let's see. Thank you, Dr. Schubel. A little towards the computer fund. I think I can definitely get it now. I think I really can. So I just need to get some time, because what I'd like to do is drive down across the border into Oregon, where there's no sales tax. I think that would save me a little bit of money, because it's probably going to be right around $2,000. I'm glad to hear you're feeling better and your nails are fine. Do what makes you happy. Thanks, man. That's all I'm trying to do. That's all I'm trying to do. It looks cool. Thank you. Diabetes is actually an indicator for frozen shoulder. That's what I was thinking. But for what it's worth, like, I guess it's because we like checked, like my levels and everything. And even though I had put on some weight, that was mostly from calories. Like I still had pretty great blood sugar levels, like not diabetic levels. Like I've had it. Yeah. So doctor didn't think it was that he thinks I just got it, but there's no way to know. All I know is it can't hurt to focus on being healthy. Do you mean like novels? Because if so, I've only read the comics. We've had no kitty visitors this stream. They're having fun upstairs with my wife and nephew. I don't know if I mentioned that my wife and I took my nephew in, but I don't really have a lot to share about that. But yeah, my nephew lives with us. I don't remember if it's been brought up. Have you tried Phantom Road yet? I don't think so. Doesn't ring a bell, Jamilin. I'll try to look it up. Count Chocula had colored nails. And you know what? I've done everything I can to live my life by the Count Chocula credo. I've tried. You did hear a kitty earlier? I missed it. I don't think they came downstairs. They might have meowed from upstairs. They can meow pretty loud if they feel like it. They might have meowed. But anyway, yeah. My time, it's just past 7, so I think it's time to do dinner with my family. I had a great time tonight. Some interesting news. Let's just say, like, we miss you, John Romita Sr. Thank you for everything you gave to us. You gave us a lot of great Spider-Man. You gave us like the designs for Punisher, Wolverine, Mary Jane, Luke Cage, and many, many, many more. I think that that we should leave it on that note. I do recommend watching the Stan Lee documentary if you've read other books about Jack Kirby, Stan Lee, Marvel, etc., so that you can just have it as another point of view. But I'm going to take off, folks, and I had a great time talking with all of you. I will be back next week. I'm working on a new comic Tropes episode. Am I going to be able to get it ready this weekend? That is the question. I'm going to try. I always try. I am going to a local comic convention on Saturday, the Puyallup SummerCon. That will take out a chunk of my time because it means I also need to adjust my work schedule around that, like my part-time job. Realistically, it might take me 2 weeks to get this one done because it also involves some research. I'm looking into an Argentine comic. Argentina has produced a lot of amazing comics, and I just thought it was time to talk about that a little bit more. So, yeah, that's what's on my radar right now. I've had a wonderful time. I'm going to take off. You know what I'm going to tell you to do. Keep reading comics. Did I miss something? Hold on. No, I did I got all the super chats. Awesome. You might have gotten it, Kale. You might have gotten it in one. We shall see. All right, folks. Take care. Have a good evening. You're the best. Peace and love.